Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia moves to Brooklyn. Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? Anytime you're ready. I got 7 Mac 11s, about 8 38s, 9, 10 Mac 10s, never end. You can't touch my riches, even if you had MC Hammer in them 357. Biggie Smalls, the millionaire, the mansion, the yacht.
The problem with Las Vegas for this particular date is April 20th is in very close proximity on the calendar to May 4th, which is the date that PBC has blocked out for Canelo Alvarez. And if anybody knows anything about venue deals and how they work, the promoter and the host usually have a blackout period before their big event, because they don't want somebody taking an event, a venue, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. Usually it's about 3 weeks, I think, ahead of their event, which will cannibalize their potential ticket sales. So the PBC people, from my understanding, did not want to allow that fight to be in either the MGM Grand or the T-Mobile Arena, which are the two main arenas that the MGM folks control. Mandalay Bay also, but that's a much smaller arena, so it probably wouldn't be large enough to host this fight. That's only about 10, 12,000 packed in. T-Mobile is 20, MGM is 18. So they got blocked out by the PBC having that date.
That was Dan Raphael in a brand new interview with Boxing News Plus. Make sure you check it out. Dan Raphael is suggesting the actual reason why the Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia fight is no longer taking place on the West Side. He's stating, and in case you guys didn't understand, I'm going to break it down in layman's terms. The reason why Devin Haney and the Barclays Center, Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia is taking place on the East Coast in New York, according to Dan Raphael, boxing reporter, in this latest interview, is because blackout dates from the PBC. Meaning, we all know that Canelo pede, you want pede? I know that. We know that Canelo prefers to fight on the Mexican dates. These dates in America, Cinco de Mayo weekend in May, so the first week of May, and about the second week of September for Mexican Independence Day, right? He fought, let's say, Caleb Plant. That wasn't on those, in those months. But nonetheless, he tries his best to fight on those particular days. And that's pretty much been his arrangement since Floyd Mayweather retired. So Dan Raphael is alleging that the so you guys got to understand this. I've been to Vegas. This is my second home. I've been to Vegas several times. Covered a lot of great fights for you guys on the channel that took place in Vegas. You must realize that the MGM Properties, they control many of the hotels on the Strip, right? Many of them. Like when I first started going to Vegas, I didn't really realize the scope of how many particular hotels are owned by MGM. And it's a lot. It's a lot. Right? Trying to pull it up for you. How much of the Strip does MGM own? With a pair recently now, blah, blah, blah. MGM Resorts still the Strip's largest casino operator, right? So Mandalay Bay, MGM, the Luxor, I guess. Man, I'm trying to find like just a list. I don't know. Does MGM still own Bellagio? So they own that until the 2019. Anyway, I'm not going to waste. Hold on. Here it is. As of July 2021, so it's a little bit dated. MGM Growth owns all or part of 7 resorts on the Vegas Strip. MGM Grand Las Vegas, Mandalay Bay, the Mirage, the Park MGM, Luxor, Excalibur. Hey, I heard they had bed bugs. Like no cap, no kizzy. Check online. They said there was like 4 hotels in Vegas that got, checked by the inspectors. I checked cheddar like a food inspector. And they had bed bugs, and one of them was Excalibur. I don't know, that's suspect. And then New York. Now this is a bit dated and antiquated because I don't know exactly when the T-Mobile came out, but they own the T-Mobile too. So basically what Dan Rafael is saying is that this fight, April 20th, 420 for all the smokers, this was in too close of a proximity to Canelo's date of May 5th. And there's blackout dates for probably like similar events, because it's like, let's say Sony, we'll just use a camera company. I own some Sony cameras. We'll just use them. If Sony has a brand new camera and then just behind it they have another camera, they're not going to typically release them at the same time if they're similar. Now, if they're appealing to a different market, like one's super cheap and one's like more high end, then maybe. But what I'm talking about is if you have two cameras that they're planning on coming out with and they're both in the same line, they usually won't release them simultaneously because you would cannibalize the sales of the other one. Like what people would then do is they would just go with the camera that's better if the prices are similar. So you can't have an option where one price is $1,400 and one price is $1,600 and they do about the same things, because then, you know, people might not buy the $1,400 option. Or similarly, you're talking about stuff like Apple and the iPhone. If Apple has an iPhone 15 and then they come out with the 16 2 months later, then who's going to want the iPhone 15 if they just came out with a 16 right after? You know what I mean? So you got to give certain things time to breathe, you know, even on YouTube, you got to give it time to breathe. Like if you just put out mad videos, then it kind of swallows the traction that the other video is gaining. So they have blackout dates in Vegas, and you know, the way Rayfield framed it, he made it sound like the PBC made a call almost and hated on this fight, but I think they just had blackout dates in because Canelo already had the dates. Now, the problem with the Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia fight, in my opinion, is so far it seems a little bit disorganized and haphazard. That's my honest assessment, and I'll make future videos kind of explaining why I feel that. I still think it's a good fight. I'm looking forward to the fight. I will fully support the fight. However, so far it seems a bit rushed. What do I mean? Let's say PBC's first Amazon Prime card. Keith Thurman on the card fighting Tim Tszyu, Rolly Pitbull. Very organized stuff, people. We heard like a slight rumor, then immediately, probably the next day, PBC confirmed and announced the fight. A day or two later, they sent media the emails saying, hey, the press conference is next week. So they did a press conference the following week. So it's boom, boom, bam. That's kind of how boxing should work. Same thing with Top Rank. When they have a Teofimo Lopez fight, they kind of announce it usually on their social media. Shout out to whoever just subscribed. But they usually announce it on their social media feed. And in short order, they start coming out with the flyers. They do the, you know, whatever press release, or if they're doing a press tour. But with Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia, they announced it, and it's like they almost rushed it, announced it the week of the Super Bowl. Then they had that altercation, which some people think was staged. It kind of looked like it. At least the meetup definitely seemed staged. You know, you guys can judge the rest of it. And then it was radio silence until about yesterday or the day before, and then Golden Boy sent out the emails and said that they're doing the press tour. So usually, from what I've seen in boxing, especially for a big fight, tickets, it's like the fight's announced, you'll see flyers on social feeds, you'll see posts about it, press conference, pre-sales, ticket sale, everything is like kind of known about. But with this fight, that's not how it's been out the gates. You had everybody who believed up until yesterday that the fight was taking place on the West Coast, and it's taking place in a completely different coast on the East Coast. Completely different venue. Someone thought it would be like, most people were under the impression that it would take place on Vegas, MGM Properties, and then come to find out that's not the case. It's actually taking place in the Barclays Center. Now, there are a lot of people who don't understand it. They're like, hey, two West Coast acts, and they're fighting over in the East Coast, different market. Neither one of them has made that their home, so to speak. Ryan Garcia fought on a card. Devin Haney fought on the card against that Abdul, I don't even know the dude's name, but it's like Abdulalov or something like that. That was like 2019. So it's been a while since either person has been on the East Coast. But now we understand, at least according to boxing reporter Dan Raphael, which makes sense. He said Canelo PBC, they already had the date booked. So to me, that also stipulates what I was saying about, a little bit rushed. Because you would market these things. You had 420, but then you didn't have your venue secure. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying they don't have time to, they got 9 weeks till the fight so they can get everything together. I'm just talking about to this point. Usually you see things a little bit more tidy for a big fight. This is an anticipated fight, so you see it handled with such care, that everything's kind of laid out like boom, 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 boom. There's been some confusion regarding this fight. Another confusion for this fight is the fight on pay-per-view. I am here to tell you, to my knowledge, this fight will be on pay-per-view. There's different people who say otherwise. There are a lot of fans that are questioning it. I will make a video if you guys want. All you have to do is put Haney PPV, Haney pay-per-view, and then if enough people leave me that comment that says Haney PPV, I will make the video and explain why I know / believe that this fight will be on DAZN pay-per-view, at least in America. I'm not saying in DAZN, Spain, or Austria. I'm talking about America, where I'm stationed, where I'm based out of. I'm in California, West Side, NorCal. Yee, for sure, right? In America, it'll be pay-per-view. If you want that video, again, very simple, leave me a comment that says Haney pay-per-view or Haney PPV, and I'll explain that. But that's the point I'm making. For such a great fight that people are looking forward to, there's certain things that are confusing. People thought it was on the West Coast, come to find out it's on the East Coast. People are suggesting that the fight will be free, and then I have different information that stipulates that this fight will be on pay-per-view. Again, I told you what to do if you want to hear me make that video. So all in all, it makes sense what boxing reporter Dan Raphael is saying and suggesting, because Canelo, I don't even know who Canelo's fighting, but Canelo has his own fan base. And then, just think about it from a business perspective. What type of business would that be if Canelo has planned the date of Cinco de Mayo since last year? Him and his team, PBC, they did their due diligence with reserving the date. And then another fight that's a good fight, like Golden Boy, ex-promoter of Canelo, right? They don't plan and they wait till the last minute, and then they could just come in and put their fight in front of a PBC or a Canelo fight. That doesn't make sense. That's kind of unfair, because one team requested and blocked out the dates, and this was known about since last year, because we know when Canelo fights, and then another team can just stage a fight and then maybe siphon some of that energy, possibly. I don't even know who Canelo's fighting, so I don't know who has the bigger fight, so to speak, but I know Canelo, he's one of the faces of boxing, and Canelo, you've seen, he'll fight people like Bevo, and in the ring walk, and not ring walk, but the grand arrivals and, things like that, the weigh-ins be packed. So Canelo basically kicked them out of Vegas. That's what it sounds like. And again, it makes sense. Now, when I first heard it, I was like, I've heard of the blackout period, but I didn't know exactly. Dan Raphael said 3 weeks. So I was like thinking, when people tell me stuff, I don't just accept anything I hear. Like I always question, like not even in a negative way, but I question what I hear because I have my own brain. So I distinctly remember a time, Vegas particularly, where there was 2 big fights. And the reason I remember it so vividly, because I did so much traveling for the channel in a short space of time. It was like nuts. There's a place in, I want to say 2017. Terrence Crawford fought in Dongo for undisputed. I went to Nebraska, I believe that fight was in. So I went to Nebraska for that fight and I watched the Crawford. I was there for fight week. Came home for a few days, and then Mayweather, if you guys remember, Mayweather had announced that he was fighting Conor McGregor. Who the f is that? I don't know what you're thinking. Who the f is that? You do none. Shut your fucking mouth, mate. Right? Floyd was fighting Conor McGregor. So I left the Crawford and Dongo fight, came home for a few days, and then immediately flew to Vegas for that fight. And if you guys remember, Canelo versus Triple G was in September, the Mexican dates. It was in September, Canelo Triple G Part 1. I went to that fight also. So I remember that stretch was real rough because it was like back to back to back big fights and traveling. But if you guys remember, like I remember, Floyd announced the Conor McGregor fight, and that was like, he announced that he was fighting him weeks before Canelo Triple G, which was already known about. So Canelo Triple G, that fight got announced first, and then Floyd then announced Conor McGregor, and he took away a lot of the energy and momentum from Canelo Triple G because they had this wonderful, crazy press conference, press tour. They were in multiple cities, Wompty. So I was thinking about what this, I was like, how did that happen? Because I remember I went to back-to-back. I went to Floyd McGregor, covered that as credentialed media. And then I came home, and then I remember going right back out and I covered credentialed media, Canelo Triple G1. So I was like, how did that, hold on. And then I looked it up just before making this video, because I always do my research. There's a lot of clickbait on YouTube when it comes to boxing. I actually do the research. And it was exactly 21 days apart. So it does make sense what Dan Rafael is saying. There was 3 weeks in between the fight. Like for me, I just remember traveling and it was bananas, but it was actually 21 days from pillar to post, from Mayweather McGregor to Canelo Triple G1. So that's how they were, because they were both in the T-Mobile, but that's how Floyd, that's almost like a loophole. Floyd Mayweather staged the McGregor fight exactly like 3 weeks, which was probably what the blackout period was. He staged his fight. So there was at least three weeks buffer, and it made sense because he completely kind of like took away some of the energy. And some people, if there was only Canelo Triple G, hell no, guys, that Max, and Max is, guys, it's big drama, big drama show and all that. Some people that were initially maybe intending to go to that fight, when Floyd and Conor McGregor were acting crazy and selling the fight, they might have elected like, hey, I ain't going to Canelo Triple G. I'm going to this fight. So now it makes sense for Devin Haney and Ryan to have moved to a different coast, a different market, and things like that, because your fight is announced. Canelo fight, we know he has the date saved. Save the date. He's RSVP'd the date. We don't know who he's fighting. We don't know how. What if he's fighting Benavidez? I mean, I don't know. I don't know who Canelo's fighting. But what if it was Benavidez? Then you don't want to stage Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney before Canelo fight, any Canelo fight really, because Canelo's an established, like Devin's on his 3rd pay-per-view, Ryan's on his 2nd pay-per-view. He's already done 1. Canelo's done how many pay-per-views? So even despite the blackout date, argument, despite that, you don't want to go up against Canelo. So I think that's kind of why the fight was moved between the blackout dates, but also from a business sense, even though Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia is a very good fight that people are looking forward to, you don't really want to go up with Ryan's former stablemate, because he was in the Eddie Reynoso gym, with a fight like that, with guys who are you know, this is Ryan's second fight at 140. He's never been a champion. We don't even know who Canelo's fighting. So it makes sense now that I think about it. And now that I hear this rationale, it makes sense to take the Devin Haney fight to a different coast. So you don't have to battle and, you know, really worry about whatever Canelo's going to do. Because different concepts of Devin Haney's last fight with Regis Prograis, how many numbers it did, but I've heard 30 to 55,000, right? Ryan, his last pay-per-view and only pay-per-view sold very well, but Tank's the face of boxing, so you would expect that. And it was a good, great promotion, you know, and it had a lot of backing, a lot of people interested. So, yeah, I wouldn't really want to compete against Canelo Alvarez either, especially if Canelo pulls a wild card and has a good fight. But even if it's a fight that some people don't like, Canelo's Canelo. Like if he says, I'm fighting Jermall Charlo, Canelo's Canelo. So at the end of the day, he usually brings a crowd, and especially in like place like Vegas, a tourist town, and that's just what it is. So that's the reason that the fight moved coast, but nonetheless, this is good for people on the East Coast. YouTube will now show you some other boxing videos to get you all caught up to speed, because I know that's what y'all missing.